Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Now, today we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 12th of October 2018, and the news that will be covered today is given on the screen, and the timestamp for the same is given in the description and the comment section given below. And now, with this, let us start with the analysis of the first article. Now, we have taken this article from page 11. Now, what this article talks about is antibiotic resistance, which may lead to the formation of superbugs. Now, what we'll do with regards to this article is first understand the various aspects related to antibiotic resistance and superbugs. And after that, we'll try to understand as to what has been the focus of this article. So now let us first understand as to what is a superbug. Now, according to the World Health Organization, superbugs are microorganisms that develop antimicrobial resistance and therefore are sometimes referred to as superbugs. And this antimicrobial resistance occurs when these organisms change when they are exposed to antimicrobial drugs. Now, if I were to ask you a question that when we say microorganisms that develop antimicrobial resistance, are we talking about bacteria or virus or parasites or all of them together? Wherein a simple question that can be asked in your prelims examination is antimicrobial resistance can develop in which form of microorganisms? When the term microorganism here includes bacteria, fungi, virus, and parasites. So now hopefully up till here you understood that microorganisms that develop antimicrobial resistance are mainly referred to as superbugs. And this antimicrobial resistance occurs when microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, virus, and parasites change when they are exposed to antimicrobial drugs. Now the second aspect that you should understand is what causes antimicrobial resistance. Now this antimicrobial resistance occurs over time and is mainly developed through genetic changes. But what is now happening is that the overuse and misuse of antibiotics and growth promoters accelerate this change process. So now hopefully up till here you also understand as to what causes antimicrobial resistance, wherein antimicrobial resistance occurs when microorganisms change, mainly through genetic changes. However, what is happening now is that the overuse and misuse of antibiotics and growth promoters have accelerated this change process. Wherein what used to happen earlier is the change in microorganisms used to occur naturally, and this natural process of genetic changes in microorganisms would occur over a longer period of time. But the current overuse and misuse of antibiotics and growth promoters by humans have accelerated this change process. And therefore, a large number of microorganisms have started to develop antimicrobial resistance and therefore are now referred to as superbugs. Now, the third aspect that you should understand is what is antibiotic resistance and how does it differ from antimicrobial resistance. Now, if I were to ask you a question, is what does antibiotics target? Do they target bacteria? Do they target viruses? Or do they target fungi? Wherein you should know that antibiotics target bacterial infections and not infection by viruses. Now, the second aspect of antibiotic resistance you should understand is whether antibiotic resistance develops in humans or not. Wherein you should understand is that antibiotic resistance develops in the bacteria itself, and it is this bacteria which goes through the genetic changes. So now hopefully up till here you've also understood is that antibiotics target bacterial infections and not viral infections, wherein this antibiotic resistance develops mainly in the bacteria that goes through the genetic changes. And what you should remember is that humans themselves do not go through antibiotic resistance, wherein it is the bacteria which goes through antibiotic resistance, wherein a particular antibiotic is not able to kill or severely weaken that particular bacteria. Now, you should also understand that if a bacteria is resistant to a particular type of antibiotic, let's say A1, it does not mean that it would also be resistant to any other form of antibiotic, whether A2 or B1, wherein what is generally said is that this particular type of bacteria has developed a resistance to this particular type of antibiotic. And apart from this, you have also understood that antimicrobial resistance can occur in other forms of microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, virus, and parasites, while antibiotic resistance occurs only in bacteria. So therefore, antimicrobial resistance is a much bigger term, wherein antibiotic resistance becomes a part of antimicrobial resistance. And so now hopefully you also understood the difference between antimicrobial resistance and antibiotic resistance. And now the last aspect that you should understand is what are the risks with antimicrobial resistance. Now, the first risk associated with antimicrobial resistance is that it leads to the inability to treat infectious diseases with already established medicines. And the second major risk with antimicrobial resistance is that it increases the cost of healthcare. So now hopefully up till here, you also understood the two major risks that are associated with antimicrobial resistance. Wherein the first risk is that it leads to the inability to treat infections with first line of drugs. Wherein if a person gets infected by a superbug, the infection becomes resistant to the first line of drugs, and therefore that person has to be given much more heavier dosage of much more powerful drugs. And the growth of antimicrobial resistance also leads to the increase in the cost of healthcare, where it leads to higher cost of medicines, higher cost of hospitalization, among other factors. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the basic aspects related to superbugs, antimicrobial resistance, and antibiotic resistance. Now let us understand as to where this would be placed in your UPSC syllabus. Now if you take a look at the UPSC syllabus, in your prelims examination syllabus, it would be placed in the section General Science. While with regards to the mains examination, it would first be placed in GS paper 2 in issues relating to the development and management of social services relating to health. And apart from this, it would also be placed in GS paper 3 in the subsection Science and Technology, Developments and their application and effects in everyday life. Now a question was asked in GS paper 3 in the mains examination of 2014, which had asked, can overuse and free availability of antibiotics without doctor's prescription be contributors to the emergence of drug-resistant diseases in India? Now apart from this, I'm providing you a link which is given in the description section, and this link provides a quiz which has been given by the World Health Organization on antibiotic resistance, wherein you can try to take this quiz and understand on how far do you understand as to what is antibiotic resistance. So now hopefully up till here you've gotten a basic understanding of the conceptual terms such as superbug, antimicrobial resistance, and antibiotic resistance, wherein the conceptual understanding of these terms are extremely relevant with regards to your prelims examination of 2019. So now let us understand as to what this article talks about. Now this article talks about an investigation that has been carried out by the Hindu newspaper and the Bureau of Investigative Journalism with regards to a particular pharma company called Zoetis, wherein what this article says is that several major pharma companies are selling antibiotics and growth promoters in India that are banned for sale in the US and Europe. And according to this article, these pharma companies such as Zoetis are selling these antibiotics and growth promoters to farmers in India so as they may fatten their poultry and livestock quickly. When poultry farmers in India are using these drugs, such as the one which is being sold by the company Zoetis, to fatten poultry such as chicken for the meat industry. But the use of these antibiotics and growth promoters by farmers in India has led to higher risk of antibiotic resistance in India, wherein these antibiotics and growth promoters have been banned in Europe and US, but are continued to be sold in India without prescription due to the lack of regulations and oversight by the government of India. Now you have to understand that the focus of this article, the Zoetis company, is very specific, and therefore what is happening with the specific company of Zoetis is therefore not relevant with regards to your UPSC examination. But hopefully you've gotten a basic understanding as to what has been the focus of this article. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 7. Now what this article talks about is the Global Hunger Index report of 2018. Now we'll try to understand the various aspects about this report from the perspective of your prelims examination. And this is because in previous prelims examination, various questions have been asked as to who prepares which report. Wherein if you take a look at the prelims paper of 2018, a question was asked as to who prepares the Rule of Law Index report, wherein the correct answer to this question would be the World Justice Project. Wherein apart from this, if you take a look at the prelims examination paper of 2017, a question was asked as to who gives out the Global Gender Gap Index report, wherein the correct answer to this question would be the World Economic Forum. Wherein apart from this, if you take a look at the prelims examination paper of 2016, it had asked the question which of the following is our indicators used by IFPRI or the International Food Policy Research Institute to compute the Global Hunger Index report, wherein the correct answer to this question would be C, 1, 2 and 3. Now obviously we would be understanding about the Global Hunger Index report in this section, and you should keep in mind this question because a major change has happened with regards to the Global Hunger Index report. And this change with regards to the Global Hunger Index report would also change the answer if a question on the Global Hunger Index report is asked in the prelims examination of 2019. Apart from this examination also asks as to who prepares the Ease of Doing Business Index report, wherein the correct answer to this question would be C, World Bank. And apart from this, the paper had also asked as to who prepares the Global Financial Stability Report, wherein the correct answer to this question would be B, International Monetary Fund. And apart from this, if you take a look at the Civil Service Examination paper of 2015, it had asked as to who prepares the Global Economic Prospects Report, wherein the correct answer to this question would be D, the World Bank. So now hopefully up till here you've understood that for the past 4 years, questions have been repeatedly asked in your prelims examination as to who prepares which report. And there are two main aspects that have been asked with regards to each question as to who prepares that report or what are the indicators that are undertaken within that report. And so, whenever any report that comes in the Hindu newspaper or the Indian Express or any other paper that you follow, try to write down as to who prepares that report and what are the basic indicators that the report currently uses. And it is within that context that we'll try to understand about the Global Hunger Index report of 2018. Now, the Global Hunger Index report of 2018 has been given out by the World Hunger High Life and the Concerns Worldwide, wherein the major change that has happened with regards to the Global Hunger Index report is that initially it was given out by the International Food Policy Research Institute, but the International Food Policy Research Institute was not involved in the publication of the Global Hunger Index report of 2018. Now, there are four indicators that have been used by the Global Hunger Index report of 2018, wherein the first indicator is undernourishment, the second indicator is child stunting, the third indicator is child mortality, and the fourth and the last indicator is child wasting. And these are the four main indicators that have been used by the Global Hunger Index report of 2018. Now, apart from this, what you should also understand as to what does the Global Hunger Index report of 2018 say about India, wherein under this report, India has improved its position in the indicators of undernourishment, child stunting, and child mortality. But India's position has declined in the fourth indicator, that is child wasting. Wherein child wasting basically means that a child has extremely low weight for his height, and this reflects acute undernutrition in the child. So now hopefully up till here you've understood that the Global Hunger Index report of 2018 has been prepared by the World Hunger, High Life and Concerned Wildlife NGOs. And what is unique about the 2018 report is that the International Food Policy Research Institute, which had been preparing this report till now, is not part of the Global Hunger Index report of 2018, wherein the 2018 report contains four indicators, first being undernourishment, second being child stunting, third being child mortality, and the fourth being child wasting. Wherein with regards to India, India has improved its position in the first three indicators, but has severely lagged behind in the fourth indicator, which is child wasting. Wherein child wasting means a child has extremely low weight for his height, and this reflects undernutrition within the child. So now hopefully you've understood the basic aspects of the Global Hunger Index report of 2018 with regards to your prelims examination of 2019, wherein you understand as to who prepares it, what are the indicators that are used in this index, and what has been the position of India with regards to this index. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we've taken this article from page 11. Now there's one aspect that you need to understand from this article with regards to your prelims examination, and that is what is Greenpeace. Now the reason you need to know this because previously questions have been asked as to what is the Amnesty International in the prelims of 2015, and apart from what is Doctors Without Borders in the prelims of 2016, wherein questions have been asked in the prelims examination on the purview of an international non-governmental organization or an international NGO, wherein the purview of Amnesty International is that it is a global human rights movement, while the purview of Doctor Without Borders is that it is a non-governmental international organization. And it is within that context that Greenpeace is an international NGO in the field of environment. When by international NGO, it means that Greenpeace is not linked with any government, currently only has a consultative status with the United Nations. And these are the three main aspects that you should remember about Greenpeace with regards to your prelims examination. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. We've taken this article from the editorial page on page 8. Now this article provides the various highlights and the critique to the contribution of the economist who recently won the Economics Nobel Prize, wherein the main contribution of the model for which they won the Nobel Prize was to give a solution for long-term sustainable economic growth. Now, William Northaus made a pioneering contribution to understand the relationship between climate change and economic growth. And according to William Nordhaus, in order to provide for long-term sustainable growth, he recommended for the imposition of appropriate carbon tax to reduce the pollution. However, his contribution has been criticized is that it is not possible to arrive at an optimum carbon tax rate, wherein a lower carbon tax may contribute to higher pollution, while a higher carbon tax may adversely affect the long-term economic growth, and therefore it becomes extremely difficult for a country to objectively decide on the carbon tax rate. While the second contribution that this article talks about is of Paul Romer. Now, Paul Romer has proposed the endogenous growth model, wherein he emphasized on long-term sustainable economic growth from technological innovations, wherein Paul Romer has proposed that there should be greater investment in technology by the government. However, the contribution of Paul Romer has been critiqued on the basis that it is difficult to determine the extent of the support that is required by the government so as to ensure technological advancement or technical progress. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the focus of this article, wherein this article provides a simplified explanation of the contribution and critique of the models given by William Nordhaus and Paul Romer that won the Nobel Prize, wherein this model of William Nordhaus and Paul Romer won the Nobel Prize for providing a solution for long-term sustainable economic growth, wherein according to the article, the contribution of William Nordhaus, wherein he gave an understanding of the relationship between climate change and economic growth. William Nordhaus had proposed to levy a carbon tax so as to reduce pollution to have a sustainable economic growth. However, his proposal has been critiqued that it is not possible to arrive at the optimum carbon tax rate, wherein a lower carbon tax rate may contribute to higher pollution or a higher carbon tax rate may adversely affect long-term economic growth, and therefore it becomes extremely difficult for a country to objectively decide as to what should be the carbon tax rate. While according to the article, the contribution of Paul Romer is that he gave an understanding of the relationship between technological innovation and sustainable economic growth, wherein Paul Romer had proposed for greater government investment in technology, wherein he emphasized on technical progress leading to higher sustainable economic growth, and he called for a greater role of the government in the form of subsidies, patents, and other forms of intervention by having greater investment in the field of technology. However, his proposal has been critiqued on the basis that it is difficult to assess as to how much the support of the government is required in the field of technological innovation. So now hopefully you've understood the focus of the editorial. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 2. Now what this article talks about is that the central government has asked the Haryana government and the Punjab government to ensure that there is no stubble burning so as to control the air pollution that engulfs northern part of India during the winter months. Now what we need to understand from this article with regards to a UPSC examination are the various aspects of stubble burning. Now the first thing that you need to understand is what is stubble burning. Now stubble burning in simple terms means removing the residue that is left behind by the paddy crop, and this removal of the residue of paddy crops is usually required in areas that use combined harvesting method. Now combines are basically machines separate the grain from the ground. However, the use of this combined machine leads to a problem wherein this machine does not cut close enough to the ground and thereby leaves a small stubble in the field. Now this small stubble that the machine leaves over in the field, the farmer has no use for, and therefore there is pressure on the farmer to sow the next crop. And for the farmer, the quickest and the cheapest solution to remove this stubble from the ground is to clear the field by burning the stubble. So now hopefully you've understood as to what is stubble burning, wherein in simple terms it is the act of removing the residue of the paddy crop, wherein this residue of the paddy crop is removed through the use of combines machine, wherein these machines separate the grain from the ground. However, after these machines separate the grain from the ground, it leaves a stubble in the ground, and the farmer has no use for this stubble. And the quickest and the cheapest solution for the farmer to remove this stubble is to burn it. And this burning of stubble in Punjab and Haryana cause a lot of air pollution throughout northern India. Now the second aspect with regards to stubble burning that you should understand is what are the available solutions so that farmers do not have to rely upon stubble burning. Now one of the most efficient technology to counter stubble burning is the turbo happy seeder. Now turbo happy seeder is basically a machine that cuts and uproots the stubble, and this machine can be used with a tractor so as to remove the stubble from the ground. And apart from this, the turbo happy seeder can also be fitted with the super straw management system. And both of these technologies can replace the stubble burning that currently exists in parts of northern India. Now the main drawback of both of these technology of the turbo happy seeder and the superstraw management system is that both of them are at very high cost for the farmer, wherein both of these technologies cost above 1 lakh each. And therefore, what has been suggested as a solution in Punjab and Haryana is to have a shared community access to both of these technologies. However, it is yet to be implemented by the government of Haryana and Punjab in an effective manner within their respective states. Now, another aspect that you should understand is why does stubble burning only affect northern India and not southern India? Now, the main reason that stubble burning mainly affects northern part of India is because farmers in northern India have to sow the wheat crop within 15 to 20 days after harvesting the paddy crop. The farmers in North India cannot wait for the paddy stubble to be removed through natural causes, and therefore the farmers in northern India indulge in the quickest manner of removing stubble, which is burning. And this is the reason as to why stubble burning and the pollution caused through stubble burning affects majorly only northern part of India, wherein farmers in northern part of India have to sow the wheat crop within 15 to 20 days after harvesting the paddy crop. And for this, they have to remove the stubble that is present in the field in a quick manner. And because of this, the farmers in northern India burn the stubble that is lying on the ground since it is the quickest and the cheapest manner to do so. Now, a question for your practice is consider the following statements on stubble burning. Now, you have to understand that I have taken both of these statements from the Economic Survey of 2017-18, and the correct answer to this question would be given in the end section of this video. And so now with this, let us move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from the editorial page on page 9. Now what this article talks about is the criminalization of politics. So now what we'll do with regards to this article is first understand as to what aspect or what current news that this article talks about. And after that, we'll try to understand each of the views given by the author on the context of the article in a separate manner. Now, the first aspect that you should understand as to what would be the definition or what do you mean by decriminalization of politics. Now, decriminalization of politics means the prevention of people having a criminal background or those involved in criminal offenses to enter into the political arena. And when you mean the political arena, it means elected officials. Now, Section 8 of the Representation of Peoples Act of 1951 provides for the disqualification to stand for elections in case of a conviction on certain grounds. Now, it means that Section 8 of the Representation of Peoples Act of 1951 allows for the disqualification of a person to stand in elections in India in case that person has been convicted of certain crimes. However, to prevent criminalization of politics, the first thing that is required is to know about such people who are involved in criminal cases. And it is only after knowing as to which person is involved in criminal cases that they can be prevented from entering the political arena. Now, the current context of the article is of a recent judgment of the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court in the Public Interest Foundation case has asked the Parliament to form a law so as to restrain citizens which are facing trials for serious criminal offences from standing elections in India. And it is on this basis that the Supreme Court in the Public Interest Foundation case has given various directives to the Parliament. Now, the first directive given by the Supreme Court to the Parliament with regards to forming a law is to have each candidate that is contesting an election in India to fill a form which is provided by the Election Commission of India that contains the information on the criminal cases that are pending against that person. Now, the second directive of the Supreme Court is that a particular party that has given a ticket to a particular candidate, then this candidate has to inform the political party about any criminal cases that are pending against him or her. And after receiving this information from the candidate, the concerned political party will have to put up this information on the website. And apart from this, the candidate as well as the related political party will also have to issue a declaration in newspaper, electronic mediums, any information on the criminal past of that particular candidate. So now hopefully up till here you've understood the current context of this article, wherein this article has three authors who have given their views on the recent Supreme Court judgment in the Public Interest Foundation case. And so now let us move on to understanding the views of the three authors. Now, according to S.Y. Qureshi, who has been the former Chief Election Commissioner of India, Parliament has not been very keen on making a law that would allow the restraining of citizens who are facing criminal offences from standing in elections in India. The second concern raised by the author is that many citizens in India do not access any websites of the political parties, and therefore they cannot become aware of any form of criminal history that has been put up by the political party that gives the criminal history of a candidate. The third aspect highlighted by the author is why will a political party publish any information, that too in a transparent manner, with regards to the criminal history of its candidate, which may actually lead to the loss in elections for that political party. The fourth concern raised by the author is that the Election Commission already displays details of a candidate on its website, and the author raises the concern that any more form of advertising by the Election Commission might lead to allegations of subjectivity, bias, and partiality against the Election Commission. And the fifth and the last aspect or the concern raised by the author that there is no law to ban such candidates that are undergoing trials on serious criminal offences, and therefore it becomes up to the parliament to enact a strong law that would restrain citizens that are facing trial for serious criminal offences from standing in elections in India. But then again, it goes back to the first point that historically, parliament or political parties within the parliament have not been very keen on making laws on this matter. Now, the second view in the article is by Rajiv Gowda, wherein he makes an argument that any such move to disqualify any candidate will require an amendment to the Representation of Peoples Act of 1951. And apart from this, disqualifying candidates at the time of framing of charges can also lead to the formation of false charges against that particular politician. However, according to the author, this judgment is in line with the principles of separation of power between the judiciary and the legislature, wherein the Supreme Court, in its judgment in the Public Interest Foundation case, has left it to the Parliament to enact a strong law. And the third and the final views in the article is given by P.D.T. Acharya, who is the Secretary General of the 14th and the 15th Lok Sabha, wherein the first argument made by the author is that the deterrent impact of such measures of restraining citizens that have criminal cases from standing in elections in India may not lead to decriminalisation of politics, wherein similar measures have already been undertaken within Indian democracy, and these measures have not been effective in curbing this menace of criminalisation of politics. And the last main argument given by the author is of a speculative nature, wherein if the authority for the disqualification of a candidate is given to a magistrate of a district, then according to the author, it might become a potential tool of abuse, which may include intimidation of witnesses and may lead to moral corruption of the magistrate or of the person against whom the charges have been filed. So now hopefully up till here you've also understood the three main views that have been given in the article with regards to the latest judgment of the Supreme Court in the Public Interest Foundation case with regards to decriminalisation of politics. Now let us understand as to where this article would be placed in your UPSC syllabus. Now this article and the explanation given in this section would be first placed in GS paper 2 within the section Governance and Constitution, and more specifically in the salient features of the Representation of Peoples Act, and secondly, important aspects of governance, transparency and accountability. And apart from this article and the explanation given in this section would also be placed in GS paper 4 within the section Ethics and Integrity. Now, question for practice is what are the hurdles in ensuring decriminalisation of politics in India? Suggest measures to overcome the hurdles in light of the recent judgment in Public Interest Foundation case of the Supreme Court. And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's newspaper. Now we move on to the question for today.